You think failure is your enemy. No, failure is your greatest teacher. Failure is your initiation into greatness. And until you embrace it, you'll never truly rise. Let me tell you something the world doesn't say enough. You need to fail. Not once, not twice, but over and over. Because it's in the wreckage of your broken plans where your real strength is born. Not in success, but in what you survived or you don't truly know who you are when everything is going right. When life feels easy, when the applause is loud, when the winds are rolling and that version of you is only half the story. Because in success, it's easy to wear a mask, it's easy to present confidence, to act like you have it all figured out. But the truth is, comfort hides the cracks. Success is a spotlight, but failure is an X-ray. It shows everything: your fear, your doubt, your limits, but also your power, your resilience, and your potential to rise. When failure hits, it doesn't come quietly. It crashes through your plans, the air out of your chest, and demands your attention. It pulls you into silence, into loneliness, into confrontation with your deepest insecurities. And in that brutal stillness, something incredible happens. You hear your own voice. Not the voice you show to the world, but the one deep inside you, the voice that asks, who are you really when nothing is working? That voice, that question, it's the beginning of your evolution. This is where the facade drops. You can't pretend in failure. There's no performance, no pretending to be strong when you're sitting in the ashes of your effort. But that's the moment you discover that you're still breathing. You're still here. And being here means you still have power, even broken, even tired, even unsure. You're still capable of choosing to stand. That choice right there, that's you. The real you. Not the image, not the projection, the core. And that's the version of you that matters. That's the you that doesn't crack when the pressure comes. That doesn't quit when it gets uncomfortable. Failure gives you a front row seat to your own transformation. It teaches you discipline, patience, and self-respect. Not the kind that comes from compliments, but the kind that comes from getting back up when no one's clapping. It's in those quiet, unseen moments that your identity begins to shift from someone who hoped they could to someone who knows they will. Think about it. The people you admire, the legends, the icons, the disruptors, they all have one thing in common. They failed spectacularly, publicly, painfully. But what set them apart wasn't their ability to avoid failure, it was their refusal to be defined by it. They used it. They learned from it. They grew stronger because of it. And in doing so, they unlocked parts of themselves that would have stayed buried if they'd always won. So the next time you fall, don't rush to cover it up. Don't minimize it. Sit in it. Learn from it. Let it stretch you. Let it break down what's false and expose what's real. Because in failure, you're not just losing, you're discovering. And what you discover will shape you into someone success never could. Failure is not the opposite of growth. It is growth. Raw, unfiltered, honest. It will hurt, but it will also heal. And when it's done, you'll look in the mirror and see someone you finally recognize, not because they're perfect, but because they're real. Champions aren't created when the crowd is cheering. They're created in silence. In the long hours when the world is sleeping and you're still grinding. When nobody believes in you, when your confidence is cracked, when your dreams feel like a distant echo, that's where the champion mindset is born. It's not handed to you. It's forged. And the fire that forges it is failure. Every loss, every rejection, every breakdown becomes part of your training. It's mental conditioning. And only those who've tasted defeat learn how to fight like they have nothing to lose. Because failure is not just about what happened, it's about how you respond. You can fold, you can blame the world, you can quit. Or you can choose to rewire your mind. You can look failure in the eye and say, you're not the end of me. You're the beginning of something better. That decision, that single moment of defiance, is where your power starts to grow. You train your mind to stop fearing the fall. You start expecting the pain, embracing it, using it. You begin to build a mindset that is immune to failure because it understands failure. Most people only fight when they're winning. They stay motivated as long as things go their way. But champions, they fight through loss, through darkness, when everything's falling apart, and they still push forward. That's what separates them. And that mindset doesn't happen by accident. It's built repetition by repetition, heartbreak by heartbreak, until persistence becomes part of who you are. Until you no longer need motivation, you run on conviction. Conviction that you were born to rise no matter how many times you fall. Failure doesn't just test your mindset, it refines it. It forces you to confront your excuses, to take responsibility, to stop blaming the world and start owning your journey. When you lose, you start asking different questions. What could I have done better? Where was I weak? What needs change? You become a student of your own pain. And in doing that, you grow faster than anyone who's always winning. Because while they're cruising, you're evolving. You're sharpening your mind into a weapon that cuts through chaos and keeps moving forward. Eventually, failure becomes fuel. It stops being something you fear and starts becoming something you use. You stop seeing it as punishment and start seeing it as feedback. It's showing you where you need to level up. It's not there to destroy you, it's there to direct you. And once your mind makes that shift, you become unstoppable. Because now, nothing can derail you. Not criticism, not setbacks, not even defeat. You've trained your mind to respond, not to retreat. And let's be clear, this isn't just about mindset in sports or business. This is about life, relationships, health, dreams. You build this kind of mindset through failure in every area. When someone leaves you, when a door closes, when your body gives out, you learn to stop reacting with fear and start responding with focus. Failure becomes your personal trainer. It doesn't go easy on you, but it makes sure you're ready for the next round. And when the world finally sees your wins, they won't realize that what really made you wasn't the moment you succeeded, it was all the moments you failed and kept going anyway. ChatGPT said, your ego wants comfort. It wants validation. It wants to protect your image. And that's exactly why failure feels like an attack. It threatens the illusion you've built about who you think you are. But here's the truth most people avoid. Your ego is not your power. It's your prison. As long as you're living to preserve it, you'll never stretch beyond it. Failure humiliates the ego. Yes, but that's exactly why it's necessary. Because what feels like humiliation is actually Niasnik. The mask gets ripped off. The pretending ends. And what's left is something real. When you fail, the first thing that breaks is the lie that you're invincible. That's a good thing. Because chasing perfection is exhausting. It's fake. It keeps you from taking bold risks because you're terrified of being exposed. Failure exposes you. It shouts to the world, you tried and you fell. And while your ego panics, your soul starts to breathe. Suddenly, you're not hiding. You're not performing, you're just being. You're being honest, being raw, being human. And that's where true confidence begins, not in proving you're flawless, but in knowing you're still worthy when you're not. Failure strips away the filters. You stop measuring yourself by the applause, by the compliments, by the approval of people who don't even know your fight. You stop needing to look successful and start focusing on being resilient. You learn to validate yourself. To look in the mirror and say, I failed, but I'm not finished. That's where strength is born, not in pride, but in humility. In knowing that even broken, even bruised, you're still growing, still showing up, still fighting. And what's ironic is this: the moment you stop protecting your ego is the moment you actually begin to rise. Because now you're not held back by fear, you're not avoiding mistakes, you're not editing your life to look perfect. You're living boldly. You're trying fiercely. You're moving through the world not to impress, but to impact. And in doing that, you become magnetic, not because you're flawless, but because you're real. People don't connect with perfection, they connect with courage. And courage only shows up after failure has humbled you. Failure humbles you in a way success never could. It reminds you that you're still a student, no matter how far you've come. That there's always more to learn, more to unlearn. That no amount of talent or luck or ambition exempts you from the hard lessons. And that humility, it makes you sharper. It makes you open. It makes you teachable. You stop walking into rooms trying to prove yourself. You walk in ready to grow. That shift is massive. That's how leaders are born, not by demanding respect, but by earning it through humility and relentless growth. And the best part, once your ego no longer owns you, nothing can break you. You're no longer afraid of embarrassment. You're no longer tiptoeing through life, afraid to fall, because you've fallen before. You've survived it. You've learned from it. And you've risen smarter and more grounded than ever. The version of you that emerges from failure isn't wounded, it's awakened. And that awakening begins the moment you stop running from failure and start embracing what it's trying to teach you, that the death of ego is the birth of authenticity. Failure forces you to think in ways you never have before. When your original plan crumbles, when everything you expected to work falls apart, you're left standing there with nothing but questions. And that's exactly where creativity begins. Because now, you're not just repeating what you've always done, you're being pushed to reimagine, to reinvent. You begin to ask, what else is possible? That one question unlocks innovation. Suddenly, your limitations become your blueprint for reinvention. You start building from the ground up, not because you want to, but because you have to. And in that process, you discover parts of yourself you never knew existed. The truth is, we rarely change when we're comfortable. When things go right, we keep doing the same thing over and over. We rely on patterns, on routine, on what's familiar. But failure destroys routine. It demands new solutions. It forces you to adapt, to pivot, to stretch. You have to think harder, move smarter. You start seeing the flaws in your thinking, the gaps in your strategy, the limits in your vision. And that's when you evolve. Not when everything's working, but when everything's broken and you still find a way to move forward. Think about every major invention, every breakthrough, every game-changing idea. It was born from a problem. A dead end. A breakdown. Someone hit a wall and said, there has to be a better way. That moment, that refusal to accept defeat, that hunger to keep going, that's innovation. And it's not glamorous. It's messy. It's frustrating. It's full of false starts and failed attempts. But it's also where greatness lives. Because the people who change the world aren't the ones who had perfect plans, they're the ones who refuse to stop when their plans failed. Failure turns your focus inward. You stop chasing approval and start chasing answers. You analyze, you study, you reflect. You become a scientist of your own journey. What worked? What didn't? Why did this happen? What could I do differently? These aren't just questions, they're the foundation of reinvention. And the more you engage with them, the more resourceful you become. Eventually, failure transforms you into a problem solver. Not just someone who reacts to problems, but someone who thrives in the face of them. You become someone who sees beyond the obstacles, someone who gets energized by challenge, someone who's wired to create under pressure. And that kind of mindset, it doesn't just serve you in crisis, it becomes your superpower in business, in life, in leadership. You're no longer afraid of the unknown because you've learned to innovate your way through anything. And that's not something you were born with. That's something failure built in you. The world often praises success, but it rarely tells the truth about what it takes to get there. Failure, though painful, is proof that you had the courage to step into the unknown. It's evidence that you dared to aim higher than what was safe or easy. Because let's be honest, people who never fail are usually the ones who never try. They play it small, they stay in their comfort zone, they avoid risk to protect their pride. But those who dream big, who go all in, who stretch for something greater, they're the ones who fall. And that fall, it's not weakness. It's a badge of honor. Every time you put yourself on the line and fail, you're planting seeds for something greater. You're proving to yourself and the world that you're not afraid of the climb. You're not here to watch life from the sidelines. You're here to participate, to build, to create. And that journey is messy. It's full of losses and heartbreak and uncertainty. But it's also full of meaning. Because failure shows that you believed in something deeply enough to pursue it. That's not something to be ashamed of, that's something to be proud of. It means you're alive. It means you're growing. There's a dangerous myth out there, the idea that success should be clean, polished, and linear. That if you're failing, you must be doing something wrong. But the truth is, failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of the process. Every fall brings you closer to clarity. Every stumble sharpens your skill. Every setback forces you to reassess and reimagine. You begin to recognize that failure doesn't mean you're not enough, it means you're learning what it takes to become more. And those who embrace that truth are the ones who eventually rise the highest. When people laugh at your failures, when they judge you for falling short, it says more about them than it does about you. Because it's easy to criticize from the sidelines, it's easy to mock someone who's trying. But deep down, most people are too afraid to even begin the climb. So if you failed, it means you were bold enough to begin. You stepped into uncertainty. You faced resistance. And you kept going anyway. That is something most people will never understand because they never had the courage to do it themselves. And here's the beauty of it. When you fail chasing something that matters to you, you build emotional strength. You develop mental scars that make you wiser, stronger, more aware. These are not wounds to hide. They are marks of experience. They are proof that you've lived with intensity and purpose. People may forget your wins, but they will always remember how you responded to your losses. Because in the end, resilience speaks louder than achievement. Grit speaks louder than perfection. And those who fail fearlessly leave a legacy that outlives applause. Your failure isn't a sign of your limits. It's a reflection of your vision. Big dreams come with big risks. And if you're not failing sometimes, it probably means you're not reaching high enough. So stop apologizing for your ambition. Stop shrinking to fit someone else's idea of success. Own your setbacks. Wear them like armor. Because the road to greatness is paved with moments where things went wrong, but you chose to keep walking. And that choice, again and again, is what makes you unstoppable. Because in the end, resilience speaks louder than achievement. Grit speaks louder than perfection. And those who fail fearlessly leave a legacy that outlives applause. Your failure isn't a sign of your limits. It's a reflection of your vision. Big dreams come with big risks. And if you're not failing sometimes, it probably means you're not reaching high enough. So stop apologizing for your ambition. Stop shrinking to fit someone else's idea of success. Own your setbacks. Wear them like armor. Because the road to greatness is paved with moments where things went wrong, but you chose to keep walking. And that choice, again and again, is what makes you unstoppable. There's a power that only comes when you refuse to give up. Not when things are easy. Not when the path is clear. But when everything is falling apart and you still choose to move forward, that's when you discover who you really are. Failure will try to convince you to quit. It will whisper lies in your ear. You're not good enough. You'll never make it. This isn't meant for you. And most people believe it. They retreat. They walk away. But the rare few, the warriors, they stay in the fight. Not because it's easy, but because they know that grit only grows in adversity. Failure will test your endurance more than your talent. Because talent can take you far, but without perseverance, it won't take you all the way. You have to be willing to endure the storms that come when the dream feels distant, when your effort feels invisible, when your heart is tired. That's the point where most people give in. But that's also the moment of transformation. Every second you choose to stay in the game when quitting would be easier, you strengthen your will. And over time, that will becomes your superpower. It makes you unshakable. Staying committed in the face of failure doesn't mean ignoring the pain. It means facing it, feeling it, but not letting it define you. Because pain is part of the process. There's no breakthrough without struggle, no triumph without trials. When you fall and rise again, you don't return as the same person, you come back wiser, tougher, more focused. You learn how to keep going, not just on the days when you're inspired, but on the days when you have to drag yourself forward, inch by inch. That's what separates dreamers from doers. That's what separates ordinary from unstoppable. Every time you refuse to quit, you prove to yourself that you're not a victim of failure, you're the architect of your comeback. Someone who doesn't run when they're rejected. You've built something inside yourself that no one can take away. It didn't come from success. It didn't come from praise. It came from showing up again and again when it was painful, when it was dark, when it felt hopeless. And that version of you, that relentless, unbreakable version, that's the one failure built. That's the one who's ready for anything. That failure doesn't just teach you how to rise, it teaches you how. True leadership isn't born from constant wins or polished appearances. It's born from scars, setbacks, and moments where you had every reason to quit but chose not to. When you failed and stood back up, you gained something deeper than knowledge, you gained perspective. You understand the struggle, the frustration, the doubt. And that understanding makes you a leader people trust. Because they don't want someone who's never been broken, they want someone who knows how to rebuild. Someone who's walked through the fire and come out stronger. The most powerful leaders are the ones who've missed a defeat. Because failure humbles you. It keeps your ego in check. It forces you to listen, to reflect, to grow. You stop pretending you have all the answers and instead you start asking better questions. You become more compassionate, more patient, more aware. You no longer judge others by their mistakes because you've made your own. That shift doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. It makes you the kind of leader who can walk beside people, not above them. Because you've been there, you get it. When you fail, you learn how to lead yourself first. And that's the foundation of leading others. You learn how to motivate yourself when no one is clapping. How to stay disciplined when no one is watching. how to stay calm in chaos and make decisions when everything is uncertain. That level of self-leadership is rare. It's earned. And it's exactly what makes others want to follow you, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. You become a living example of what it means to keep going when the path disappears. Failure also teaches you how to lead with authenticity. No masks, no performance, just truth. Because once you've failed publicly, once you've been vulnerable, there's no point in pretending anymore. You stop leading to impress and start leading to impact. You communicate differently. You speak with purpose, not pretense. You admit your flaws. You own your past, and that raw honesty creates real connection. People aren't inspired by perfection. They're inspired by courage. And nothing demands more courage than showing up as your real self after falling hard. And as you rise from your failures, you begin to see something extraordinary. Your story becomes someone else's survival guide. Your pain becomes someone else's permission to keep going. Your journey becomes proof that falling doesn't mean finished. That failing doesn't mean you're not a leader. In fact, it means you're becoming one. Every mistake becomes a lesson you pass on. Every setback becomes wisdom you can share. That's leadership, not controlling others, but elevating them, helping them see what's possible by showing them what you've overcome. Eventually, you stop chasing titles and you start building legacy. Because failure teaches you that leadership isn't about being in charge, it's about being of service. It's about lifting others while you climb. It's about creating space for people to grow, even when they fall. Especially when they fall, you stop needing to be seen as perfect. And you start striving to be useful. Because when you failed enough, you realize that the most powerful thing you can offer the world isn't your image, it's your experience. Your resilience, your fight. That's what makes people believe in you. That's what makes you a true leader. So, if you're standing in the ashes of failure right now, good. That means you tried. That means you had the guts to reach for something bigger than yourself. And now is the moment you decide who you become. Not despite the failure, but because of it. You are not broken. You are becoming. Every fall carved strength into your bones. Every setback refined your vision. Every rejection taught you resilience. You are not here to play small. You are here to rise, to rebuild, to lead with fire and to lead your soul and purpose in your steps. Let the world call it failure, you call it foundation. Let them see defeat. You see the beginning. Because greatness doesn't come from the ones who never fall, it comes from the ones who fall 1,000 times and stand up one more. And that relentless, fearless rise, that's where legends are born.